Good morning. Good Chodesh. Freilich Chanukah. We begin by thanking the sponsors of the Talmud Torah, sponsors of the month of Teves, Yoel and Sara Kelman, in honor of the birth of their daughter, Mazel Tov, Oriya Tahel, and in hope that all couples praying for children will soon have their tefilos answered. Amen. Steve and Teri Czinn, in honor of their grandchildren, Adin, Tzvi, and Naftali Moshe. You should have a lot of nachas from them and your entire family. Today's daf is daf Chaf Gimel 23. We are going to pick up on daf Chaf Beis, Amud Beis 22b, at the two dots about a quarter of the way up. So the two dots, Chaf Beis, Amud Beis. The Mishnah told us, "Al kol tzara shalo tava al tzibor." In other words, any type of challenge that they are anticipating, they institute a fast day. Tana Rabbanan. Al kol tzara shalo tavo al tzibor masriyan. On any tzara, any challenge, any adverse situation that can come up, they could be masriya. As we described, masriya could either mean in literal translation to blow the shofar, or it means that they are mispalo, chutz mirov kishamim, besides for too much rain. In other words, we never want to daven to take away rain. My taima, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Lafisha ein mispalo on rova tova. We are not mispalo that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should not give us more tova. By nature, rain is good, rain brings out good things, and therefore we don't say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's too much rain, and therefore please take it away. And obviously this is not talking about when it's destructive. If it's destructive, so then of course it's not tova. But it's talking about an overwhelming amount of rain. It's just very, very rainy. You don't need all that much rain. We're not mispala, that should go away. How do we know that we're not mispala for rova tova, for too much goodness? Shenemar, for it says, we quote a pasuk in Malachi, Heviu es kol hamaser el beis ha'otzer. The pasuk continues with the whole description over there. At the end of the pasuk, it says, "V'harikosi lachem bracha ad belidai." And the Gemara explains, "My ad belidai." What does ad belidai mean? Ad belidai means until there should not be enough. Amar Rami Barav. Rami said the name of Rav. Ad she yivlu sifsosechem milomartai. Until your lips will ultimately be dried out from continuing to say die. In other words, we don't say die. In other words, there's no point in time when we say die, it's enough. When it comes to something which is good, we take it, we accept it, we love it, we're thankful for it, we don't say stop. Amar Rami bar Rav Yud, his name was Rav Yud. Rami, the son of Rav Yud, said, Ubagola in Bavel, however, Masriyan aleh. Indeed, if we do have too much rain, so then we are Masriya on it. We do blow the shofar. We are mispal to stop Tani Nami Hachi. We have learned similarly in a Brisa. Shana Shigashameh Merubin, a year that there's tremendous amount of rain. Anshe Mishmar Shachan Anshe Maimed. Later on Daf Chaf Vav on 26, the next parak, the Mishnah is going to describe this, and Rashi actually gives us a description of what this was. But ultimately, the Anshe Mishmar, we already know from previously in this Masechta that there are 24 Mishmaris, there are 24 groups of Kohanim, and they would have a rotation. Now, they also had representatives of that Kohen group. They had representatives of Yisraelim who were obviously outside the Beis HaMikdash, and their job was to be Mispalel. So the Anshe Mishmar would send the message to the Anshe Maimud, Tnu einechem ba'achichem, pay attention to your brothers, Shabagola, who are living in Bavel, Shlo yihei bateyem kivareim. Their homes should not turn into their burial spots. Now, this is part of the tefillah to Kohen Gadol says in Yom Kippur as well. And there's a lot to say about what it means for a person's house to be his caver. Literally in this Gemara, it means that he should not be flooded out to the point where his home is going to be flooded and he'll die inside his house. But there are many other things a person can do in their own home which resemble life of being in a caver. In other words, a non-life. So there's a lot of hashkafa in this statement as well. But here it literally means person's home should not become their caver, should not die there. Shalu, as Rabbi Eliezer. He asked Rabbi Eliezer, Ad heichon geshamim yardim v'yispalalu shelo yardu. At what point do we say that rain should stop falling? Amar lahem kadesh yaman adam karen afel. Person will stand, but karen afel is a very high place. The yichshach sheikh raglav b'mayim, and his feet are going to be swimming around in the water. The Tanya Vatanya Yadav Raglav. Haven't we learned to talk about Yadav and Raglav? No, Vatanya Yadav. Did we not learn that when he said this, he said Yadav? The Gemara says Raglav ki Yadav, both his hands and his feet coming. In other words, it's an expression. He was saying it's really at no point. At no point do we stop asking for rain. He gave a very high place, which the water is not going to get to that point. Amar Rabba Bar Barchana, Rabba the son of Barchana said, "Lididi chazili karen afal." I saw karen afal. The kama hutaya, I saw an Arab merchant up there. Kirachiv gamla, he was riding on his camel. V'naket rumcha biyadei, he was holding a spear in his hand. And mischazi inive, he looked like a little worm. In other words, it's so high up that seeing a man riding the back of a camel holding a spear, he looked like a tiny worm. In other words, it's such a high place. Bottom line, we're never going to inspire that it shouldn't rain, even unless the highest place that we can think of is going to be flooded with water. Tanar Banan, V'nasati gishmeichem be'itam. Just to point out, we're spending a lot of time today talking about Gemaras, about V'nasati gishmeichem be'itam. Today is the first day that we say we're saying TALMUD, so we're learning indeed about what it means to have Gishmei Bracha. Tanar Banan, V'nasati gishmeichem be'itam, I will give the rain in its proper time. Lo shakura, v'lo tzemeya. It's not going to be so soaked, so saturated. At the same time, you will not either be thirsty. Elabaninus should be something in the middle. In other words, V'nasati geshmeichem be'itam, the proper time for rain describes that there's the proper amount of rain as well. A normal amount. Shekol zman shegeshamim merubim, if there's too much rain, mitashtishin ha'aretz. It soaks up the land, saturates the land with water. If the ain't motzia pears, nothing can grow. If everything is too wet, just too damp, all the fields are going to become like a swamp. Davar acher, another understanding of the V'nasati geshmeichem be'itam is belele revios, belele shabasos. There are two specific times when it is better for rain to fall. On leile revios, which is Tuesday night, belele shabasos on Friday night. And the Gemara explains, Shekein watzinu b'meishim ben shetach, as we found in the Shimon ben shetach, sheyardol hem gesham belele revios, rain fell on Tuesday night and on Friday night. Until their chitim were so big, they were like kidneys. And seorim, barley, was like the size of the seeds of olives. Ba'adashim and lentils, kedin rezav, were the size of gold coins. But sarumihem, they wrapped it up, and dugmuladoros for a sample for all generations. So just some context over here. Rashi explains that Leila Rivios, Leila Shabbosos, why is it good for it to rain then? So Leila Shabbos we can understand. What are people doing on Friday night? They're home with their families having a Friday night Suda. So if you're sitting at home in your house on Friday night, unless you have a Shalom Zachar to go to, the truth is that generally speaking, it's a pretty good time for it to rain. You're not doing any work outside. You don't have to be out there. It's a very good time for us to be able to fill up our reserves, our reservoirs with water. It doesn't get in the way. On Tuesday night, so Rashi references a Gemara in Maseches Pesachim, which talks about that on Tuesday nights there was a shade, there was a demon that was out and about. So people would stay home. It was known people stayed home on Tuesday nights and they didn't go out because it was dangerous. It was a dangerous time to go out. So again, if it's a dangerous time to go out, people are staying at home anyway. People are hunkered down at home. So it may be a good time for it to rain. So that's why it was considered to be a good time for it to rain on Tuesday night and on Friday night. Now the Gemara's continuation of the discussion of Shimon ben Shetach was because people are going to start saying, hold on a second, twice a week. I don't know if that's enough rain. We have a lot of things we have to grow here. We have orchards, we have fields, we have tons of produce that has to be watered. I don't know if we could handle 2 days a week. So the Gemara says, don't worry about it. If you look at the days of Shimon ben Shetach, you can see it rained only on Tuesday nights and on Friday nights. And look what they had. They had such beautiful produce. Not only did the produce grow, but it was so big, it was so luscious, it was so healthy, to the point where they wrapped it up. And the Gemara says, V'tsaru mihem dugma ladoros. They wrapped up samples of this for all future generations. Lahodiat, let them know, kama hachet gorem, to let them know how much the chait has actually accomplished. In other words, we now have smaller peros, and we might think something about nishtanu tefilos. The nature changed. Blame it on the nature. The Gemara is saying that they wrapped up these very large produce over here to show us it's not the nature that changed, it's us that changed. It's the chait. It's because we are not on the same level as the generation of Shimon ben Shetach, and therefore our produce is not as beautiful and is not as luscious as the produce that existed in the time of Shimon ben Shetach. Shenemar, for it says in the pasuk, Avonosechem hatu elef achataechem manu atov. In other words, your sins were the ones that caused this, and they refrained the good from coming. Umanu hatov mikem. V'chein matzin b'mehordus. The same thing is true with regard to rain. In the times of Hordus, shahayu oskim b'binyan beis hamikdash. Hordus renovated the beis hamikdash. V'hayu yardim gesham b'layla. It rained at night. L'machar, the next morning, nashva haruach. The wind started blowing. V'nispazru avim. The clouds dispersed. V'zarcha achama, and the sun was shining through it. V'yatza amlu malachtan. Everyone went out to their work. V'yadu shemalecha shemayim b'deim. They knew that their work was ultimately under the grace, under the blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it rained in the evenings. It never rained during the day. Not only that, nothing was soaked, nothing was all saturated with water. Everything was perfectly dry, and they were able to work properly during the day. So we see that rain at night is a good thing. Maisa, there was a story. Sheshalchu l'choni amagal. This is referring back to the story of Choni Amagal we had in the Mishnah, and here the Gemara is going to go through a lot more details about what happened in that story. Tana Rabbanon. Our rabbis have taught us, Pamachas, Yatsa Rov Adar v'lo Yardu Geshamim. The whole winter was passing. It was most of the way through Adar. It's almost Nisan already. So we have Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, and most of Adar had already passed, and still, unfortunately, v'lo Yardu Geshamim has not rained yet. So Shach l'choni amagal, they sent a message to Choni Amagal, Hispala, please be mispal, please daven, v'yardu geshamim, and rain will fall. What happened? Hispala v'lo yardu geshamim. He went out, and he davened, and it did not rain. So now, Ag Uga, he made a circle, v'amad pesocha. He stood inside that circle, G'derach she'asa chavako kanavi, the same way that chavako kanavi did it. Shenemar, for it says in the pasuk, al mashmarti emda v'esyatz v'al matzor. I will stand in this guardian place, and I will stand at the border of it. In other words, we see that he stood himself inside a confined area. Amar Lefanav, he said, Ribono shel Olam, Banecha samu paneim alai, shani k'b'bayis lefanecha. Your children are relying on me. Why are they relying on me? Shani k'b'bayis lefanecha. I am like a child of your home. Nishba ani. He said he takes an oath. I take an oath. B'shimcha gadol, in your name, with the name of Kadosh Baruch Hu, she'eni zaz mikan ad shetarachim al banecha. I'm not going to leave this circle until you are merachim al banecha. It's an interesting term that he used, ad shetarachim al banecha, because he didn't say what he wanted. He was mispal earlier that it should rain, but his tefillah that he was mispal was a general tefillah, Kadosh Baruch Hu have rachmanis on your children. And we'll see why that's very important later as the story unfolds. Hischilu geshamim menatfin. The rain started drizzling down. Amar lo tamidav. His tamidim of Choni Amagal said to him, Rebbe, ri'inucha v'lo namus. We would like to see you, but we don't want to die. Rashi says, Nira oscha v'lo namus b'nichusa. In other words, it's a statement. Hishtadol shelo namus barav b'pnei atziras geshavim. In other words, we don't need it just to drizzle. We're not asking for a scientific definition of rain. We need water. We want to see you. We don't want to die. It seems to us, it seems to us the only reason why it's raining is because the Kadosh Baruch Hu has such a great relationship with you. You took a shvuah, you took an oath that you're not going to leave the circle until it starts raining. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, all right, listen, Choni, you can get out of the circle now. In other words, we've checked the box. It started raining. So again, here we see, he says back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Amar lo kach sha'alti. Is that what he asked for? Ella yishmei boros, shichin uma'aros. So now, again, where did he say that? In our Gemara, we have no place where Choni Amagal said he wants to fill up all the cisterns and all the reservoirs. He stood in the circle and he said, Ad shetrachim al banecha. So that's why it's important, because ultimately he gave a general tefillah, at least the way that we have the lashon of our Gemara, the way the Gemara tells us what his tefillah was. He was mispalel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanis, should have mercy, should have pity on his children. This is what they needed. They didn't need it to drizzle. They didn't need like a mist outside. They needed it to rain. So that's why he was able to go back later and say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I was mispalel, you should have rachmanis on your children. That's what I was mispalel for. So then he said, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, allow it to rain so much that all the cisterns, all the burrows, all the pits, all the reservoirs will be filled up. Yardu bezaf. So what happened? It started pouring. Achakal tipa utipa kamali pi chavis. Each one was like the opening of a barrel. V'shieru chachamim shein tipa pechusa milug. There was so much rain that was falling down, such heavy rainfall, that each raindrop was the size of a lug, which is a large measurement. It's like a pitcher. Amar Tamida of Rebbe Binuch V'Lanamas. They said the same back. We want to see you. We don't want to die. It seems like Kadosh Baruch Hu is now just making it rain. It's like a flood. It's like kind of like in the days of Noah. There was so much rain was falling down. How could we sustain this? Amar Lo Fanov Lo Kach Sha'alti. So Choni Amago said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Kach Sha'alti. This is not what he asked for. Ela Gishmei Ratzon Bracha Unedava. I want rain of bracha, unedava, a gift, gishmei ratzon. In other words, Choni Mago said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, you know what I want. I want it to rain normally. Can it just rain, please? So what happened? Hispalal v'yelchol. 1 second. Yardu ketiknan. I skipped the line. Sorry. Yardu ketiknan. It rained normally. Ad sha'alu kol amla harabayis, until the entire nation went up to the Harabayis. Why the Harabayis was higher? It was a higher elevation. So they all went up to the Harabayis to avoid the rain. Amrulo Rebbe Kishem shehispalalta sheyerdu kach hispal v'yelchol lahem. Now they said to Choni Amago, do us a favor, please now be mispal that the rain should stop. It's raining, and it's been raining at a normal pace. It's normal rain, but it's just not stopping to rain. And now the water is accumulating, so much so we all have to go to a higher elevation. Amalahem kach mikublani. I've been mikabel, as we learned in our Mishnah. Shem mispalo marova tova. We're not supposed to be mispalo for too much good. So the Gemara says, Afal pikein. Nevertheless, he said, Haviu li par hoda'a. Please bring me an ox of thanks. Haviu lo par hoda'a. They brought him an ox of thanks. In other words, a carbon toda, carbon shlamim. Samach shtei yodav alav. He leaned both of his hands on top of this par, on top of this ox. The Amar Lafan of Ribbono Shalom, he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem, Amcha Yisrael, Shotzei Mitzrayim, your beloved children, you took them out of the slavery in Egypt. Einon Yicholan Lobro Batova, they cannot sustain too much good of Lobro Paranos. They can't deal with this. They can't deal with heavy punishment. They can't deal with too much good. Ka'asta Aleim, you got very upset at them. Einon Yicholan Lamod. They can't stand in front of you. They can't deal with this drought. Hishpata aleim. You give them a tremendous amount of bracha. Hishpata aleim tova. Einam yicholan lamod. They cannot stand before you with all of this tova. Hiratzam lefanecha. Be the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sheyifseku hageshamim. The rain should stop. V'yerevach pa'olam. There should be peace and tranquility in the world. What happened? Miyad noshva haruach. Immediately the wind started blowing. And v'nispazu hagavim. Clouds dispersed. V'zarcha chama. The sun came out. V'yatsu ha'am. The nation went out. L'sadav evilohem kamein epitrios. After the rain stopped, they went out to the field and they brought back kamein epitrios, truffles, and mushrooms. So it's important to point out that I'm not remembering exactly, but we generally don't do smicha on a shlamim. Smicha is something which is done on a lot of other karbanos to come for an aver, but not a shlamim. So the smicha that he did here must have been a voluntary smicha. It's not usher to do the smicha, but generally speaking, when you bring a chatas, there's smicha. You lean on the carbon and you talk about the aver that happens. This was a carbon shlamim, it was a voluntary carbon that was brought, but ultimately he did lean his hands on it to do a smicha because that's what he needed. He needed to be mispal for Klal Yisrael. Shalach lo shimim and shetach. Shimon ben Shetach sent a message to Choni Amago, and he said to him, Omale Choniata, if not for the fact that you were Choni, goes Rani Alechanida, I would have put you in Chayrim, I would have excommunicated you because of your behavior. She'ilu Shnayim Shanim Kishnei Eliyahu, for had your years been the same years as Eliyahu Hanavi, Shemaftechos Geshamim Biyado, the keys of rain are in his hands, Biyado Sheliyahu, Lo Nimtza Shem Shemaim Eschalim Alecha. Just remember the story of Eliyahu was Achav's children. The story of Yericho, the city of Yericho was destroyed, and there was a klala that was placed on anyone who rebuilds the city of Yericho. Chiel went and rebuilt it, and he was warned that whoever builds it, as they begin building it, their first child is going to die, and when they put up the doors of the city, their last child will die. And indeed, that's exactly what happened with Chiel. Every one of his children died. So he came to be Menachem Avel. Eliyahu Hanavi came to Menachem Avel, and he basically told him, "You deserve it. You knew this was coming. You were told this was going to happen. You were so brazen, so chutzpahdik. You just ignored what I told you, and therefore that's why your children died." So there's a whole discussion of what happened over there. Achav spoke up, but the bottom line is, because Achav said that we say in Shema every day that if the Klal Yisrael doesn't do the mitzvahs, lo yiyeh mata, it won't rain. Right, that's the whole parsha. And the whole parsha is that if they will listen to the mitzvahs, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give rain. If not, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will stop the rain from coming. And Achav said, look what's going on here. The Avodah Zarah is rampant. The Jews are serving the Baal. They're serving the Avodah Zarah of the Baal. Look, it's raining like crazy. So the whole thing, the whole Taanis Moshe, Achav expressed such tremendous chutzpah. You saw the whole Torah of Kadosh Baruch Hu is irrelevant. So at that point in time, Eliyahu Hanavi realized he needs to do something drastic. What he said was, Kadosh Baruch Hu has Rachmanis. The Kadosh Baruch Hu extends His mercy, and He waits and waits and waits for Klal Yisrael to do tshuva and does not bring punishment. And you go ahead and you take that Rachmanis and you flip it around and you say, you see, the whole Torah is irrelevant because of it. And Eliyahu Hanavi said, Chai Hashem, he took a shvua in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there won't be rain ki im al piv. In other words, without him saying there will be rain, there will be no more rain at all. So therefore, in other words, that's the story with Eliyahu Hanavi, and there was a terrible drought. The story goes on and on of everything that happened there with the drought and how much Klal Yisrael was suffering. Whether or not it was the right thing for Eliyahu Hanavi to do this or not, this is the whole discussion. But ultimately, the bottom line is, because of the story of Chiel and Achav, Eliyahu Hanavi made a gzera, and he said, Chai Hashem im yiyah hashanam ha'ela talamatar ki im lefi devarai. He said, took a shvua that there won't be rain unless he permits it. So now Eliyahu Hanavi said there should not be rain. And Choni Amago went ahead and he used all these type of tactics to get HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give rain. So that's why Shimon ben Shetach said to him, had you and Eliyahu Hanavi lived in the same generation, it would have been a terrible Chilul Hashem. In other words, the Chilul Hashem of Achav would have perpetuated, because Eliyahu Hanavi says yes, you say, Eliyahu Hanavi says no, you say yes, it would have been a contradiction, there would have been a problem. So that's what it says. She'ilu shanim kishnei Eliyahu, shemaftechos kishamim biyado shel Eliyahu, lo nimtza shem shemaim eskalim alech. Wouldn't it have been a tremendous Chilul Hashem that you ultimately say there should be rain? He says there should not be rain. Aval ma eselcha. What should I do? I can't put you in cherem. I can't excommunicate you. She'ata mischati lefnei hamakom. You sin, quote unquote, lefnei hamakom, in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'oselcha ratzonecha. Hashem listens to you. Where else do we find that? Keben shemischati al aviv oslo ritzona. A child could do things to his father which are inappropriate. Nevertheless, what does the father do? Out of the unconditional, everlasting love that a father has for his son, still, nevertheless, even when children do things wrong, nevertheless, oslo ritzona, the father still does what he needs. Yomer lo. Child says to his father, Abba, holicheni rachtzeni b'chamen. Please take me to wash me in warm water. And then, shatzvani b'tzonein, rinse me off in cold water. Ten li agozim, shkedim, afarsikim, rimonim. Give me walnuts, almonds, peaches, pomegranates, finosin lo. And he gives it to him. Alecha kasav momer. And upon you, Choni Amago, the pasuk says, Yismach avicha v'imecha v'sagi olatecha. Parents, ultimately, they just rejoice, and they're always with simcha over their children. Tana Rabbanan. Ma shachu b'nei lishkas hagazos l'choni amago. What did the Sanhedrin, what did they send to Choni Amago? V'sigzar omer v'yakim lach. So they listed two psukim here in Eov, and we're going to understand what those psukim mean. V'sigzar omer v'yakim lach makes a gzera v'yakim lach v'adrochecha naga ar, and upon your ways, in other words, you make a gzera, and it is niskayim. Ultimately, the decree that you make is upheld, and on your ways, the light shines. V'sigzar omer. What does that mean? When the pasuk says "V'sigzar omer," you make a gzera, and you say "Ata gazarta milamata," you make a decree from milamata, from down here. In other words, in this world, Hakadosh Baruch Hu and God, who mekayim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mekayim amarecha mamala. Hakadosh Baruch Hu fulfills your words from up there. V'aldrachecha naga ar. What does the pasuk mean? Upon your ways, the light shines. Shahaya efel ha'aras b'tfilosecha. In other words, the darkness becomes Shahaya ha'efel ha'arata b'tfilosecha. You brighten up the world with your tfilos. Ki shpilu v'tomer geva. What does that mean? It means dar shahaya shafel ha'gvata b'tfila. A generation that was very low down, you lifted them up b'tfilosecha with your tfilos. V'shach einecha yoshia dar sheshach ba'avono. Does not mean sach. Sach is to bow down. Shach over here is. They have sach is to speak, shach is to bow down. So they bow down. In other words, they fell down with their actions. Yadecha and I think I skipped the line. Shach ba'avono hashato b'tfilosecha. They fell down with their sins, and hashato b'tfilosecha, you saved them with your tfilos. Yimalit naki dar shalo hayanaki maltaso b'tfilosecha. A generation that was not clean, maltaso, you save them with your tfilos. The nimlat bevar keficha, when the pasuk says the nimlat kevar keficha, that means maltaso, you save them the ma'aseh yadecha habrurin, with the beautiful and clear actions. In other words, your actions were always clear and perfect, and therefore you save them. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Kol yom sh'oso at tzaddik, hayimitztara mikrazeh. All the days of that tzaddik, he was very much mitzta'er on this pasuk. Who's also tzaddik? Look at Rashi, 3 lines to the top on the left side of the page. Choni hamagal hayimatztara mikrazeh. So we're continuing to talk about Choni hamagal here. And all of his life, he was bothered, he was pained by the following pasuk: Shir hamalos v'shuv Hashem es shivas tzion hayinu kechalmen. This is the Shir hamalos. We say this a little time before benching. And it says, "B'shuv Hashem es shiva tzion hayinu kechalmen." This is between the first and second Beis Hamikdash. The Yidden were pining, yearning for the return of the Beis Hamikdash, and David HaMelech in Tehillim describes them as dreamers. Amar, he said, "Mi'iko denayim shivin shnin b'chalma." Could someone actually dream? Could fall asleep for 70 years and dream? Could you be a dreamer for 70 years? So now what happened? Yom Echad, it's a very famous story. Yom Echad havi azo ba'orcha. Choni Maga was taking a walk. And Chazi lahu gavra. I should point out that I believe that there are some who say this is a different Choni Maga. In other words, we are talking about Choni Maga. There are some who say that this was not the same Choni Maga, but ultimately, this is the story. Okay? Chazi lahu gavra. He saw a guy, Devinata Charuva, he's planting a box or a carob tree. Amar lei, hi, ad kamash nintain. How long does it take for this tree to grow? Amar lei, ad shivin shnin. Takes 70 years. Amar lei, pshita l'cha d'chayes shivin shnin. Is it so simple to you that you'll be around in 70 years? Amar lei, in other words, he said to him, what are you planting things for? You'll never reap the benefits of it. So he had a great answer. He responded to him, Amar lei, hi Gavra. This guy said back to him, Alma b'charuva eshkachte, ki hechi de shasli li avasi, shasli nami libroi. I was born into a world that had carob. You know why? Because my father and my grandfather and their fathers all planted carob. You know what? They didn't benefit from it, but I did. So just like my father went out of his way to plant carob trees like this, I will have it. So too my children have it because I planted for them. Yosef kakarach Richter. He sat down to eat lunch. He's making a sandwich out of his bread. Asole Shinta, he started feeling very tired. Nim, and he fell asleep. Ahadrole Mishunisa, Achse Ma'ena, Venim Shivin Shnin. So basically, his sleep overtook him, and he fell asleep for 70 years. Kikam, Chazi Lehu Gav, when he woke up, he found this guy to have become a lakit minayu. Somebody was taking care of off of this tree. Amar Le, he said to him, Atu deshas l'sei, are you the one who planted this? Amar Le, Bar Berei Ana, I am the grandson of the guy who planted this carob tree. Amar Le, Shema Mina Denami Shivin Shnin. That's when he realized he slept for 70 years. How does he know that he slept for 70 years? It wasn't like he had his calendar that woke him up and he said, it was, year 2000, he went to sleep, he woke up at 2070. He had no idea. So he knew because when he asked the guy, who are you? He said, I'm his grandson. He cheshbon, 2 generations, about 35 years each. And he said, okay, this guy, it must have been 70 years that I was sleeping. Chaza l'chamre, he went back to his own donkey. This yalda le ramchi. There were generations and generations of donkeys that were born from his very own donkey. So he basically realized, I've been asleep for a while. Azul lebesa, he went to his house, and Amar lahu, Braid Chani Amagal Mikayam. Does anybody know if Chani Amagal's son is still alive? Amar le, they said back to him, no. Bray Lessa, his son already passed away. Bar Bray Isa, his grandson is still alive. So what happened? He said to them, Amar lahu, what do you think he said to them? Ana Chani Amagal. I'm Chani Amagal. Lo hemnuhum. They didn't believe a word he said. Azal beis medrash. He went to the beis medrash. Sham inul rabbanon tekamri. The rabbanon, the Talmidei Chachamim who were sitting in the beis medrash who were learning, they were saying Nihirin shmaitzin kibishnei choni amago. They were so happy that all the brights that they were learning were so clear, and they referenced choni amago who had such clarity in his learning. The Chavi Ayel beis medrash. Because when Choni Amago have the ayala base midrasha, he would go to the base medrash called Kushyu Dehavilu Rabbanon. Any question that was asked, Havi Mefarak Lahu, he would answer it immediately. Amar Lahu, Ananinu, I am the guy. I'm Choni Amago. So imagine this: the guy walks in, someone's like reading a tshuva from Moshe Feinstein. He says, "You know what? This is fascinating. Open one tshuva from Moshe Feinstein. All of Shas, all of Shulchan Aruch is there. Hashkafa, halacha, everything is covered in one tshuva." In walks in a man, it says, my name is Moshe Feinstein. He would say, we have plenty of mental health professionals here, but we have to go on with our service. And this is what happened. He walked in, and he said, I'm Choni Amaga, lo mnu. They didn't believe him. Lo avdi lahu yikara could be by. He did not get the respect that he deserved. And what happened? Chalash daite. He had a very hard time with this. He started to go crazy from this. Boy rachmi. He asked for rachmanas. He said, Kadosh Baruch Hu, please have rachmanas on me. Umis, and he died. This is the source for that which people say, O chavrusa, O misusa. This is a line which is used elsewhere as well. But the concept of having a chavrusa, having friends, having people to relate with, having people who understand you, having people you can learn with, having people whom you can discuss difficult things with, who understand you, you understand them, is such an important thing. If someone's isolated, someone's alone, people don't recognize them, so then it's worse than death. Therefore, he was mispal. He was mispal Kadosh Baruch Hu to have rachmanas on him. Doesn't say he was mispal that he should die. He was mispal Kadosh Baruch Hu to have rachmanas on him. And what happened? Kadosh Baruch Hu was merachim on him, and he took his neshama back. Abba Chilkiah bar Brei Choni Amagal Havi. So the grandson of Choni Amagal was Abba Chilkiah. The Chimatzrich Alma Lemitra Havi Mashadri Rabbanu Legabe. The Rabbanu would send to him Uboy Rachmi Vasi Mitra. The Rabbanu would send. In other words, they would send Rabbanim to him to be mispal that it should rain. In other words, it must have been in the family. They had this ability to be able to be mispal to Kadosh Baruch Hu to bring rain. Zimna Chada, one time, Itzrich Amal Mitra, they needed rain. So Shadar Rabbanan Zugud Rabbanan Legabe. Lemiboy Rachami Denaisi Mitra. It was a time there was a drought, and they sent a pair of Rabbanan to Abba Chilkiah to ask him to be mispal for rain. So this pair of Rabbanim went to the house of Abba Chilkiah, and they couldn't find him. They went to the fields, and they found him to be karafik. He was digging. perhaps properly, he was using a hoe. I'm not sure if the word for hoe, maybe hoeing. He was doing something in the field. Yavu le Shalma. They walked over to him and said, Shalom, Shalom alecha Rabbi. He didn't even turn his face to them. Bepanya, in the evening, Kevi menaket Tzvi, when he was gathering together the wood, Dora Tzvi umara b'chad kaspa, he put the wood and his shovels, his hoe, all his equipment on one shoulder, the glime and his jacket, b'chad kaspa, on the other shoulder. Kula orcha, the entire way home, lo sayim esani, he didn't put his shoes on. Kimati lamaya, when he got to a damp area where there was water, sayim esani, he put on his shoes. I'm not sure how much water there was because there was a drought, but ultimately he got to a place where there was some water and he put his shoes on. Kimata lehizmi, lehigi, when he got to thorny areas, dalinu lemani, he lifted up his pants. Kimata lemasa, when he got to the city, nafka devisu laape kimakashta, his wife came out all adorned and all made up. Kimata lebese, when he got to his house, alas devisu bereshi, his wife went in first. V'hadar ayel ihu, he went in after his wife. V'hadar afterwards, ayli rabbanon, he allowed the rabbanon into his house. Yosef v'karach Richter, he sat down and ate lunch. V'lo amar luhu rabbanon, su krochu, he did not offer the rabbanon any of his bread. He didn't offer them a sandwich. Palag Richter lianuki, he split the bread to his children. L'kashisha chada, to the older child he gave one slice of bread. Ulezutra, to the smaller children, tray, he gave 2 pieces of bread. Amar lala devisu, he went to his wife, Yodana, drabanon, mishum mitra kasu. I know what these people are here for. I haven't even given them attention yet, but ultimately I know what they're here for. V'nasik le'igra, he ascended to the roof. V'nibai rachme, why don't we go up to the roof and be mispal for them? In other words, why beat around the bush? Let's go do it. Efshir demiratzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hopefully HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to us. Perhaps HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to us. V'yaisi mitra, and he will bring rain. In other words, he said to his wife, I don't want them to say they came to me and they asked for rain, and ultimately we're going to take the credit for this. Let's just go up there and be mispalel, and we want to take the credit. Saku le'igra. I'm sorry that I'm going quick. I want to get Alma done. We have about 6 minutes. So Saku le'igra, they ascended to the roof. Come iu b'chadav zavita. He stood on one side of the roof. He and she, his wife, stood on the other side of the roof. And kadim siluk anani mihach zavita devisu. The clouds started coming from the side where his wife was standing. Kinachas, when he got down, Amar lahu, so now the Rabbanan, they watched all these strange activities that happened with Havachilki, and they said, now we need some answers. Amar lahu, amai asur Rabbanan. Sorry. So Amar lahu, first he said to them, amai asur Rabbanan. Why'd you come? Amalei, we were sent here because we were supposed to ask for rain. So Amar lahu, Baruch hamakom shlo hitrich eschem lavachilkia. He said to them, you know what? They sent you here. I'm so happy you didn't need me. Look, it's already raining. So you came, happy you came, you listened to Rabbanan, you're Mekayim, the mitzvah of listening to Rabbanan, chazak shliach osa shlichuso, you did what you had to, but you know what? The best of both worlds, you didn't even have to bother me, and I didn't have to go out of my way to be mispal for rain. So I said, okay, fine. Amrulei, yadina dmitru machmas marhu. We know the drill. We know that the rain came because of you. So I'm not going to ask you about that. Machmas marhu da'asa. El-leimalon marhani milid t'miyalan. We're going to ask you about all the rest of these strange activities that you did. My time, ki avinu lamar shalma lo azbalan mar ape. We came to you, we said hello to you, and you completely ignored us. Why didn't you turn around and say hello? So he said, I was working for somebody. I was being paid by the hour. Had I turned around to talk to you in the middle of work, I would have been using my paid time to spend my time schmoozing with you. It's not appropriate for me to be talking to you in the middle of work. Ultimately, I thought maybe I won't be paid. My timer, Dara Mar Tzvi Echad, Mar Tzvi Echad Kaspe, Uglimi Echad Kaspe. Why'd you decide to put your equipment, your digging tools on one shoulder and your shirt on the other shoulder? Haisel was a road. And Lahachi Sha'ali, Lahachi Lo Sha'ali. I borrowed it to wear it. I didn't borrow it to be something to go under my shovel. Now, what's going to happen if I put a shovel, types of digging equipment on top of the jacket, and get torn, and get snagged? And ultimately, I'll be responsible for it. My time at Kulu Orchel Asayim Marmasani. Why didn't you wear shoes? Why'd you put shoes on only when you got to the water? So he said, Armalahu Kulu Orcha Chazina. The whole way I can see the Maya Loka Chazina. He was very poor, obviously, and he didn't want to wear out his shoes. So therefore, wherever he was able to see where he was going to step, he paid attention where he was going. And he didn't step on glass, on broken glass, or on rocks. However, when he got to the water, he can't see what's below the surface of the water, and therefore he had to put his shoes on to make sure that he won't step on something, he won't get hurt. Why is it when he came to a thorny area, you lifted up your pants? Amar lahu, he said back to them, skin grows back. Like if I get scratched, all right, I'll get a scratch. It'll grow back because Baruch Hu takes care of repairing that. My pants, if they get ripped, there's no fixing that. My time kimata mar lamasa nafik devisu demar kimishkat kimikashta. Why is it when he got home, your wife came out all dressed up and all made up? Amalahu kadesh lo etin enabi isha acheres. She's concerned when I come home that I'll see somebody else. She wants to make sure that she is the most attractive, that I won't be attracted by somebody else. My time ayla hibaresh. Why'd you make her go in first? V'hadar ayla abisra, and you went in afterwards. V'hadar ayla anan. You let us in only after everybody. In other words, we're the guests. Why don't you let us in first? Then your wife, and then you. Amar lahu mishum dlabat kisule. I don't know you guys. I don't want to leave you guys alone in the house. My wife. My time, it happens to be, there's so much to talk about over here, but what can we do? My time, kikarach ma rifta. Why is it that you made a sandwich? Lo amar lon aisu kruchu. Why do you come and invite us to make a sandwich with you? He said, mishum lo nefisha rifta. I don't have enough bread. The amina, I understood, lo achzik buraban tivusa b'chinam. You're not going to take it. And then what's going to happen is, you're going to say, oh, he was offering it to us. And in other words, it would have been Gnevas Das. You would have said, oh, he's offering it to us, but you would have felt bad to take it, seeing I only had a couple of slices of bread. And I really didn't want you to eat it. So therefore, I didn't want you to assume that I was going out of my way to do something that I wasn't. It would have been Gnevas Das. My time, Yav Marli Anuka Kashisha, Chada, and Chada Rifta Ulazutra tray. Why'd you give the older child one slice, the younger child 2 slices? Armalahu hai kai bebesa. This one stays in the house. The older one stays home. V'hai yasef bebeknishta. The smaller one still has to go to school, and therefore the one who's at home has the opportunity to get more bread as the day goes on. My time, akadman salak anane mihach zavisa the heavy kaimas devisu demarla another day. Why is it that the clouds came to your wife before they came to you? The Gemara answers mishum the itza shchicha bebesa. His wife was at home all the time. His wife is home all the time, and she constantly fed people who were hungry, who didn't have food of their own. So therefore, she did more than I did, because all I do is give them money. She actually brings the food to the mouths of the aniyim. Doesn't come so close. Hinami hanu beryoni debishrivusan ana ba'i rachim midlamusu. All these the peoples who would drive us nuts. There's baryonim, they would drive us crazy. So what would I do? I'd go inside and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kill these people already. What does his wife do? She actually was mispalel like Bruria. She was mispalel that they should do teshuva instead of being mispalel that they should die, and therefore they did teshuva. Chanan hanechba. Chanan hanechba, the hidden Chanan, was the grandson through his daughter of Choni Amago. The world needed rain. Having Meshadri Abani Yanuka Debe Rav Ligabe. They would send the children to him. They'd pull on his pants. Abba Mitra. They would say to him, please, Abba, give us rain. Literally, would yank out his pants. And they would say, please give us rain. He said, so this Chanan Hanechba would say to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Asay b'shvil elu, please bring rain for these children. She'ein makirin bein abed yav mitra la'abed lo yav mitra. They think I could bring rain. How innocent and how beautiful these children are that they don't even realize that I can't bring rain. Please bring it for their sake. But why do they call him Chanan Hanachva? He would hide himself in the bathroom. What does that mean? So Rashi explains that he didn't hide out in the bathroom. But what he would do is when he went to the bathroom, he was very, very modest and very tzniistic, and therefore that was a tremendous chus that he had. We're kind of running out of time. Let's do one more piece. Amar later Zikler Safra. Tachazi Mabein Takifi the Aryeh Yisrael. What's the difference between the strong people of the land of Eretz Yisrael, the Chasidi the Bavel, between the pious people of Bavel? Chasidi the Bavel, Rav Huna Rav Chisda Kevi Matzrach Amal Mitra. Rav Huna Rav Chisda, when the world needed rain, what would they do? Amri Nichnif. They would say, 1 second, did I skip something? Amri Nichnif and Hadri v'nibai Rachmi. After Demasi Kadosh Baruch Hu Yaisi Mitra. What they would do is they would gather together everybody to have a public day of davening, and they would daven in public. To keep it the hour to Yisrael, could go to B'yon of Rebavud, Rabbi Mani Kevi Matzrach Amal Mitra. When they needed rain, have the aisle lebeisei. They would go to their house for Amar Lahu, and they would say to Havalu Gualki, bring me a sack, the azel, the icy bezuza avura. I'll go buy with some money. I'll go buy some grain. Kevi Naftali brother would go outside. Azal v'koybe duchta mikta. They go into a very low place. The Hashem, as the pasuk says, from the depths, I'll call it to you. V'koybe duchta tzniya. They would hide in a very private place. Umechasi besaka. They would cover themselves in the sack. To buy rachmi, they would plead for Rachmanis, for Asi Mitra, and it would rain. Kevi Asi the base when they would come home, they told their family they're going out to buy some grain. Kiasi the base when they'd come home, Amrilay would say to him, I see Mari, Avura, have you brought anything back? Amar Lahu, they said, Amina, I said, Hayab Asi Mitra, Hashta Revach Ba'alma. I figured it started raining, so the prices are going to go down soon. Now everything is very expensive because there's no rain. Now that it's starting to rain, the prices will drop, and therefore I will wait for it to stop raining, and then I'll go out and buy things at a lower price. We'll stop here at the Su. Have a wonderful day. I'm sorry, to the 9 o'clock minion. We tried.